Welcome to Mike's Tech. So, I was given this Fisher-Price record player when I was probably 2 or 3 years old. It's my first record player that I ever owned, and for the most part, it was a pretty nice first record player, except for this one album that never quite seemed to play right on there. I had 2 copies of it, a stereo copy and a mono copy, and oddly enough, the mono copy always sounded pretty good, but the stereo copy, I thought it sounded particularly bad on this turntable, and yet when I would play that same stereo copy on some of my other turntables, I thought it actually sounded better than the mono copy, and I wondered what was going on here. Well, that is what we're going to check out in today's video. So the first thing I think that we should do is to take a listen to both the stereo and the mono copies of this album on this little record player, so you can get an idea of the difference in sound quality. And the mono copy of the exact same album. Besides the fact that the mono version was cut much hotter, that is to say, there's a lot more volume in the grooves, I think that the stereo version definitely sounds a lot worse. If they were cut at equal volumes, the mono version would definitely sound a lot better. However, that mono version is cut at a very, very high volume, and that Fisher-Price does not quite like records cut that hot. So the mono does have a little bit more distortion than it will in the next test that we're about to do. And that is where this gets really intriguing. You see, if you put these records on a proper turntable, all of a sudden, I think the stereo version begins to sound better than the mono. Let's have a listen. Pretty decent, right? Well, now let's take a listen to the mono copy of this album. So the mono mix sounded pretty decent. I don't think it sounded quite as good as the stereo mix, although I would have to say that the soundstage was kind of odd. It seemed like it was just a panning back and forth from the left to the right earphones with some of the instruments a little bit, and that's really why they called it stereo. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of a stereo effect there. Well, we're going to try something interesting now, and that is to take this stereo copy of this album and rechannel it into mono. The first 5 or so seconds, 6 seconds are going to be of this in proper stereo, and then after that I will rechannel it into mono. The results are pretty interesting. And in mono, back to stereo. And again, back to mono. You probably notice that the mono sounds quite inferior to the stereo, and I think there are a couple of reasons for this, and that is actually what was going on with that Fisher-Price. You see, it is a mono record player. It's only got one speaker in it, therefore it is mono by nature, and so that's what the difference was. I was playing this on other record players that were reproducing it in stereo, whereas the Fisher-Price was in mono. Now, why the big difference in sound quality between mono and stereo? Well, it's this thing called phase cancellation. It's a bit complicated, and I don't quite understand it myself, but basically the left and right channel, certain elements of the mix cancel each other out. So what you're left with is just kind of a small shell in mono, which is yet another reason why it's important to understand the difference between stereo and mono mixes, and to know what to look for when you're hitting those crates buying records. I definitely intend to explore stereo and mono recordings more in the future on this channel, and previously I had in a Peter, Paul, and Mary comparison between them in stereo and mono, which you should also definitely check out. Well, that's pretty much all for this video. Oh, there's one other thing real quick that I figured I would mention, just because I think it's kind of funny. This LP proudly says on it that it is unbreakable right here. And interestingly enough, it is definitely not unbreakable. It is made out of styrene. It's one of those LPs. If you drop that thing onto a hardwood floor from about 2 feet up, it would probably shatter into about 1 million pieces. Oh, do I see Pickwick Corporation on there? Oh, that explains a lot. Very much a discount brand without a doubt. Well, at any rate, thank you for watching. Comments and questions down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching Mike's Tech.